Well, thank you, everyone, for joining our webinar this afternoon or this morning, if you're on the West Coast or anywhere west of here in New York. I'm Nick with Ground Truth. If you are not familiar with Ground Truth, I, for the life of me, don't know how you ended up here, but here you are, and we're happy to have you. And we're going to get you a little bit familiar with Ground Truth, but also familiar with a couple of our guest agencies today. Just to put a little button on it, Ground Truth, at the end of the day, we're a location-based marketing company. We're the leader in location-based marketing, and we're also an ad tech company. They pay me to say that, but it's not any less true. We are the leader in this space. We help agencies like the ones that have joined us today and small businesses gain insights about their visitors and about people who are interacting with their ads, their digital ads. And then we also allow them to activate media against those insights with a number of tools. We've managed service. We also have self-serve platform that a lot of agencies like our guests today that will use to enable their clients' campaigns and to reach their client goals. The sort of impetus for this webinar is given the amount of interaction that we've had with our free COVID-19.
Nick, you're muted.
Am I?
I don't think so. I think I can hear him.
I can hear you.
Oh. Yeah, we're good. Keep going.
Okay. I hear some music in the background, and I appreciate that, Lynn. Anyway, so shameless plug, we have a free COVID-19 foot traffic tracker tool on our website, and we've seen a ton of sort of interaction with that from agencies and from SMBs alike, and it got us thinking, oh, what are they looking at this for? They're trying to plan, probably. So we thought we'd put together a webinar about how some of the agencies that we work with have really dealt with what's been, a unique year, and then what that sort of means for their plans for 2021, how they've changed maybe or how they haven't. And so, here we are putting this together. Now, I'm joined by someone who's already spoken here, my lovely coworker, partner in crime, confidant here at Ground Truth, MaryClaire Hitson. There she is. But we're also joined, like I said, by a couple of agency partners of ours, James McCool over at Rain Local and Amanda Schwegman-Jordan down at Sides and Associates out there in Wild, Louisiana, one of my favorites. I think let's just go over some of the ground rules, excuse me, while I try and navigate the slides here. There's a ground rules slide somewhere that's gone now, but here's the agenda. So we're going to talk a little bit about their agencies. Really, this is an agency focus. This is not going to be all about Ground Truth, not going to be all about our products and how great we are, even though, hey, we're great. But it's going to be a lot about these agencies and the agencies that are like the people who've joined this webinar. Like I said, what they've learned this year, what they specifically do, and how those little areas of the world have changed, or big areas in certain cases. And then we'll talk about 2021 and how they're thinking about it, and maybe get some thoughts spinning in your own head as the viewer here. And at the end, we will have a Q&A that you guys can ask James or Amanda or even MC and I any questions that you'd want to about Ground Truth or about their agencies or about just agency planning in general in these unprecedented times. I think here's the ground rules. So everybody's going to be muted. Sorry, that's the rules. Lynn makes them, and we have to follow them. There is a Q&A button where you guys can actually submit those questions. I will actually ask MC to read those probably towards the end, and then we'll all bounce off. Whoever those are directed towards will fill in as needed. And then, of course, you can email any follow-up questions that you have after this, and because it's a finite amount of time, and we're not going to be able to get to every question here. You can go ahead and email those to the address that's here on the screen at expert@groundtruth.com. Or if you are already a user, you have a platform specialist, you have an account executive like MC, like myself, that you can always annoy, and very likely they'll get back to you unless you've pissed them off in some big way. There is also a poll at the end of this webinar, or that we'll send out after this webinar. So if you think we could do a topic that's really interesting to you guys or very relevant or something coming down the pipe, if you hate the host and never want to see him again, you can send in that feedback and they will tell me. I promise you they will. So keep that in mind. Let's go back to our last slide here, which is just a wonderful fire, because this is going to be just that, a fireside chat. So I guess we could kick it off with Amanda. Like I said, I want to give everybody sort of an overview of you and James and Rain and Sides and what you guys do. So we have a little bit of context to talk about some of the decisions, some of the observations that you guys had this year. So if you could, Schwegs, if you could just tell us a little bit about Sides, the client services you offer, the verticals you work in, just sort of a little bit of an overview would be great.
Sure. So Sides and Associates is a full service communications, strategic planning, public relations, marketing, and project management agency out in the beautiful Lafayette, Louisiana. We have one of the best open office environments where there's no privacy. You get to see everybody, but it is pretty fantastic when you need something and you can just kind of holler right across the way. We have some of the best food, music, and festivals when we're in a different world right in our backyard, and it makes it a fantastic place to be a part of. Some of the verticals or some of the clients that we've worked with, a lot of government contracts. This agency's been around for 45 years. It's one of the best known and has one of the best reputations in town. And they've worked with a lot of government. They've worked with some big names known across the entire United States, as well as some of the smaller ones that are right here in Lafayette. We've got auto, we've got banks, we've got a whole bunch of just a menagerie of different people that we like to help around this area and statewide. So that's a little bit about Sides and Associates. I've been there with them for about a year, and been in this industry though for about 10.
Nice. Well, 10 points for menagerie and using that in an intro. James, why don't we kick it over to you and you can just sort of give us a little bit of rundown on Rain and then we'll get going.
Yeah, for sure. I'm run sales over at Rain. We're a full service mobile first marketing agency, I should say, for financial service industry clients. So we work primarily with banks and credit unions, anywhere from 500 million assets up to north of 24 billion. So super wide funnel, pretty much everything in between, banks, credit unions. We have a few veteran clients as well. We work with a few QSRs, quick service restaurants, a couple veterans associations, a few landscaping companies, but our primary focus is really on financial services. So do everything from branding plays to business line product specific, a ton of geofencing, ton of first party, third party data targeting. And yeah, we're based out here in LA. I'm in Venice. We're all remote. Pretty much been remote for my whole time here. I've been with the company a little over about 3.5 years now. But yeah, that's pretty much what we're doing.
What's sort of the unique approach that you guys have to have in that industry? If you guys are really FSI focused, somebody on the other side of the coin, like Amanda here, who's literally serving a bunch of different types of clients any given day. Do you guys, with the ability to focus on a single vertical, has that allowed you to deepen a skill set, or do you need to hire in specific ways with, people's experience or anything like that? Can you speak to that at all?
Yeah, of course. It's a tricky one, right? So financial service industry is probably, I would say it's second to national defense in the regulation and compliance, right? So there's a lot of regulations. So you really have to understand how that works, right? And I think, given that we've really dove into that particular vertical, we have become a specialist, and that really is kind of a differentiator of ours. We're able to kind of say, what does it take to make sure that you're reaching the right people, right place, right time, in a compliant fashion, right? So how are you making sure that you're avoiding redlining issues, you've got your logos in place, you're handling data privacy properly, because it really is, mobile is kind of seen as somewhat of a shiny new toy, which is a double-edged sword, right? That can be like, let's get on board, let's make this happen, or you've got compliance officers that can, be a little concerned, but it's definitely a unique approach.
Yeah. Amanda, working with so many government contracts, I assume you guys also, maybe just in the bid process or maybe in another respect, I'm sure there's a lot of what you guys would call non-traditional hurdles you have to jump over, whether that be with the services you offer or the tools that you use and things like that.
Absolutely. Especially now. We've definitely had some different hurdles that we've had to overcome, but also just in the sense that this is fairly new for the agency that I work with as well. Even though digital was something that they offered, it wasn't to the extent that they do now with me on board and with a lot of the things that we have to offer. Some of, the hurdles are just different as well. They've been around 45 years. So when you bring someone new into the mix who's got different ways of doing things or different products that they've never heard of, there's definitely a different learning curve, I guess you could say, that we've had to overcome as a group.
Yeah, no, I mean, it seems like both of you guys are touching on, okay, we have a lot of experience in our specific verticals, and maybe you've sort of identified yourself as trusted vendors, wherein if you do bring a new solution to the table, they can say, okay, well, Sides has brought this, or Rain has brought this, so they've done the due diligence, and we don't have to worry about this. Is that about the case?
I think that's absolutely the case. I think too, where I was previously is where a lot of these solutions were offered. And so now that they have them in-house, it's a whole different, it's a good thing. It's definitely a great opportunity for not only our agency, but our clients. So it's definitely been a positive, but it takes a little extra, I guess you can say, coaxing for them to really understand where we're coming from and what we're trying to help them with.
Yeah, and actually something I wanted to bring up with both of you, and now it's even kind of better knowing the context of both situations. Like obviously agencies bring in a lot of different types of tools, right? And James, you were touching on compliance, and Amanda, we just did as well. How is that? I guess, do you guys present, a lot of agencies that I work with, and MC, I'm sure you feel the same about this. A lot of us ask, or a lot of them ask, I should say, about reporting and the types of, there are certain circumstances where you can't use certain tools, that's right. But, do you guys break out individual services and say, like, this is what we use for this, and here's the report from that? Or you just sort of white label everything and say, here's the report from Rain, here's the report from Sides. And they just sort of trust how the sausage is made, so to speak.
I can kind of speak to how we do it over here. To some degree, I mean, the reporting is fairly transparent, right? So we've built out a client-facing dashboard where you can basically log in with your own credentials and view all of the campaign data as it goes. In terms of the actual distribution platforms, typically that's kind of lumped together to some degree. It's these are we're primarily an in-app mobile marketing company, right? So if it's in an app, we'll be transparent on where the audiences we're targeting, what are the locations that we're focusing on. We'll give kind of like a top 10 app list typically, but for the most part, when it comes down to the actual distribution, there's so many apps, when it comes down to it, it's really it's kind of tough to break down every single placement when the idea is that you want to get your message in front of everyone within your bank's footprint on every app that they're using, right? So it's kind of trust us to make sure we're getting the distribution where it needs to be.
Yeah, I think that speaks to that trust between like a vendor or agency and client relationship. Would you say, Amanda?
Absolutely. I white label the reporting side of it. So when the report comes from us, it's coming from Sides and Associates, but I am 100% transparent with everyone that I speak to. If I'm selling Ground Truth, if I'm recommending Ground Truth, then I absolutely tell them that this is the product that I'm putting them in. A lot of it has to go back to my history with Ground Truth. I've been with you guys for a long time. There's a lot of trust there as well. So I know that when it comes to putting it in front of someone, that it's going to be something that they're absolutely going to benefit from, as well as any of the vendors that I may use. So the reporting side of it, I pull from the back ends of all of them and put it into one cohesive document, so it's easier for the client. But I'm absolutely transparent and let everyone know where I'm placing them. There's a reason I'm placing them there, and it absolutely goes back to trust.
Hey, so I have a quick question. Sorry to interrupt. I just want to ask you guys from as agencies and how, vetting partners is one of the big things that you guys have to do quarterly, annually. Like, what are some of the things that you look for in a partner, whether it's a location partner or a search partner or social? What are some of the big ticket items that partner has to have or needs to have to be put on a plan, or to be able to be like, we want to work with them because of X, Y, Z?
I'm definitely gonna say, as Nick already starts to laugh, patience is definitely one of them. I was with, like I said previously, I was with a television station out here for 9 years, and that's how I was introduced to, we'll use Ground Truth as an example. And it was absolutely the level of service that I got from anyone that I worked with at Ground Truth, and I've worked with a few. So, but definitely has to go back to service. And I know everybody says that, but I think when you're the middleman, so to speak, and you're going out there and you're trying to put the right thing in front of people, you've got to make sure that you have what you need on the back end, including the people to help you make it happen, especially if you're using something like a self-serve product. I mean, price. You've got to take a good look at that, because there's always going to be some sort of a markup or something that you have to do to make sure all things work. We're all agencies, we're all professionals. We know this happens. So I think it's something that makes a huge difference, as well as the confidence in the product itself. Yep. And I'm a huge fan of saying, I want to try it before I buy it. Yep. And if I get that opportunity to do so, I think it helps me to be able to speak to it and to recommend it, because if I don't believe in it, I can't sell it.
Right. 100%. What about you, James? Would you agree, or do you have other items that you would look into?
Yeah, I would agree with all those. I would say piggybacking on top of it, I think one of the major things that comes into play is, does it do something we're not already doing, right? Is there a new technology? Are we offering something that we don't already have in our mix? You know, for example, you know, there's different business lines, different products that a bank or credit union can promote. We'll need different distribution plays, right? So maybe there's a native option that we need to have to drive somebody to a blog article or a financial literacy website. Maybe we need to focus on footfall attribution to branch locations. You know, it really kind of varies campaign to campaign. So you want to really make sure you've got that breadth and that kind of you know, different targeting options, different distribution options. But on top of that, I mean, yeah, obviously this service is a huge part of it. You want to make sure you're dealing with somebody you can actually connect with and troubleshoot when need be.
Yeah, I mean, I've always thought that this is a great platform. I work with I work with a bunch of financial institutions using this type of technology, and not necessarily just Ground Truth, but of course I'm biased for Ground Truth. But you know, being able to create audiences that really speak to specific financial tools is a huge strength of this platform. Or if you're trying to sell auto loans, you don't want to go after people who don't have a car, right? You're not trying to go after the people riding the subway. You want to go to people at Ford dealers or who are buying, you know, Mitsubishis or something like that. You know, one last thing I wanted to cover off on this sort of agency overview is, you know, the way you work with clients to understand their goals. It's, I presume, and maybe this is just a presumption, but it's a little bit easier when you're so verticalized like you are, James, rather than where Amanda might be. But, you know, when you look at goals, how does that inform, I guess, you know, the tools that you're choosing out there? How does that inform, you know, how you're going to make recommendations for what you're using? And you know, this is going to segue into what your plan was sort of for this year, and then how that's since changed. But let's talk about some of those goals in the past that you've established the relationship with a client. Now you're saying these things are working, or, you know, I think we should try X, Y, and Z.
I think some of the goals that I've had to adjust, I guess, would be our visits. Living in, you know, that's always been one of my selling points with Ground Truth per se, but then also any of the verticals that I work with. I mean, I have an auto dealer that I work with. I have a bank that I work with, where the foot traffic means so much to that person to get them in to the actual establishment. And so that's always been a huge goal that we've set up for. And right now we just can't do that. That's just, we live in a different world right now. So to have to adjust that and then talk them off the ledge as well, because you get to that point where they start to panic, especially when we're going through something as serious as a pandemic, where everyone's views are different. Everyone feels differently about it, but you got to do what's best for all concerned. So to talk them off the ledge and tell them, hey, we can track other things. Let's bring people to your website. You know, let's get a virtual visit in there, and have to not only adjust what you're trying to accomplish, but then also to maintain the client's well-being and trust in the fact that we're going to continue to spend money, even though things are different right now.
Right. Yeah. And I would imagine maybe, again, sort of because, James, you have a little bit more of a focused vertical. Did you guys have a lot of clients sort of in Q2 hit the panic button and come to you guys and say, hey, you know, full stop everything? And did you guys have to do, as Amanda's talking about, maybe a little bit of calm the waters, say, you know, this was our strategy going into the year, here's why it's still good? Or what was that pivot process like? Can you speak to that at all?
Yeah, definitely. I think the whole world had a bit of a shock when the whole thing first happened, right? So we hit March, and it was, all of a sudden the economy tanks, everything shuts down, and that obviously causes an initial panic. The good news is it didn't last that long, right? So right off the bat, it was sort of freeze up. What are we going to do? What's the approach? Nobody's ever had this happen before. How are we going to move forward? But when you take a step back and kind of look at how it all was going to play out at the time, it's, what's going to happen? People are going to be at home and they're going to be spending all of their time glued to their phones, right? They're going to be exactly where your eyeballs, where you want their eyeballs to be. And this is more of an opportunity than anything else. So there was an initial educational component that was sort of, very case by case subjective. Certain institutions are going to already be sort of geared that way anyway, and then others are going to be a little bit more nervous. But it was definitely a conversation that needed to take place. But I think, if you look at the overall trend, it's been sort of moving somewhat away from branchless banking anyway. That's been kind of with mobile check deposits and online account opening and everything like that. We were kind of already to some degree moving in that direction anyway. So it wasn't the biggest shock to our particular vertical, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, I listened to a podcast that says, the biggest COVID is really, it's not a change agent. It's just an accelerant of changes that were already in play. Exactly. And I find that to be, very insightful. Great. Well, are you guys hearing sort of this goes hand in hand? I mean, I get the sort of agency has to play therapist to the client at the beginning of the COVID pandemic. But after the sort of dust settles, are you guys noticing any trends in just overall client pools asking different types of questions? I mean, Schwegs, you were talking about like visits were a big thing, and now we're talking about digital visits. We're talking about sort of online conversion funnels, things like that. Once the education is passed, obviously there's a continuing level of education there. That's going to be with any shiny new tool, like you said, James. But are there different overall questions like, hey, should we be thinking about this new product offering that we've now developed because of COVID or anything like that?
I've definitely taken it to a different level with one of our government contracts. We had the opportunity, and we were very fortunate to win a bid that was literally just centered around COVID. So we've had that type of opportunity with some of our clients, but then for some of the smaller ones, because we have these little ones who do also, panic, not sure what to do. To piggyback off of what James said, is everyone's in front of their phones right now. Everyone's in front of, a lot of people are sitting on their couches more than they have been in the past. They're, with all the cord cutters that we have, streaming has been a huge opportunity for us to get a different product into the mix of our clients' marketing plans, where maybe it hadn't been as much so before, or we took some of the dollars and shifted them to a more digital plan for them at this time because of the opportunity that we have being stuck at home a little bit more, or maybe not out and about as much as we were in the past. So I think if you have the opportunity to either center around the situation we're in, I mean, embrace it. It is what it is. We're stuck in it until we're not. And if that's the case, then as agencies and as what we have to be to our clients, we have to take what we've got and make the best of it. So I think it can be done in a couple of ways, either center around it or shift a few things here and there to make it work best and really capitalize on what we have to live with.
Yeah. I mean, you guys have the advantage of relationships with these clients. And so I think you have the ability to give somewhat anecdotal guidance where you're like, look, people are going to be sitting at home and looking at their phones more. But those are really insights that are at the end of the day, really rooted in data, right? Like, everybody was running around with their hair on fire at the beginning of this whole thing, but we were able to look at like, oh, the digital consumption is actually way up. That's a great thing for us as a digital marketing company. Let's start introducing that narrative to our clients. So, data plays a big role in the types of conversations, especially that we have, as an MC and I are talking to people who aren't really users of the platform just yet. So we have to have these conversations that are more educational. So how much, when you're talking to either established clients, or James, you're definitely in a sales role, Schwegs, you're one of the best sellers I know, but how much does data play a role in the conversation that you're having with clients, new business or existing clients, to sort of calm the waters down a little bit?
Yeah, data is huge for us. Across all platforms, right? As a full service agency, we're handling creative in-house, we're doing all the distribution, all the audience targeting. and everything we've ever done has been tracked, and it's, you know, what creative imagery resonates for what business line in what particular markets, right? So all of that is tracked. And I think, you know, one of the key components that really plays into this is, you know, the shift has really gone from any sort of experiential event-based marketing campaigns, at least for the time being, way more online, right? So it's how do we, as opposed to how do we drive, you know, foot traffic to branches, how do we reach everybody at the football game, that kind of thing. It's how do we get in touch with our members, our existing customers? How do we get them to increase their mobile adoption? How do we get our, you know, non-mobile banking customers to start using mobile banking? How do we get mobile check deposit pushed through, that kind of thing? So I think it's really gone from, you know, we've got these existing customers. How do we cross-sell them? How do we get them using different products that, you know, they might not be using? And that's a huge part of how we use data, particularly at Rain. We do a lot of first-party device ID matching, right? So you've got a list of free checking account holders. You want them to sign up for a rewards checking account. How would we go about doing that? Well, it's easy to do on mobile. You basically just map the device IDs to the email addresses. So I think that's a lot of how the focus has shifted. And then, you know, even from a third-party audience standpoint, in terms of identifying which audience segments are likely to convert for what business lines, right? So you can really you can leverage that on mobile way more so than you can with any other more traditional marketing platforms right now. It's, you know, who just recently moved to the area, or, you know, parents with children in high school, you know, different ways of finding which audiences are going to resonate for which products. That's something we've done since we started, you know, operations years ago. So I think that's become more important as things kind of shut down on the event-based side.
I mean, it's really interesting that you guys do have access to that large pool of first-party data. That's got to be incredibly useful. And then, you know, flipping over to Amanda, where you guys are more relying on third parties. Although James, you touched on third parties as well as being a key driver for new user acquisition and that sort of expansion of domination of the wallet, I guess you'd call it, in finance. But I mean, I know, Schweiggs, you and I have had conversations about some of the audience insights that you can pull out of Ground Truth. Are there other platforms? Are there other tools? Are there other things that your clients are asking for other than the great things that we bring to the table? You know, again, Ground Truth is great. Just trying to bring it sort of level set for every agency out there that isn't, you know, we never recommend that you only use Ground Truth as a platform. It's a holistic approach to marketing, and we're a great slice of that pie. But I'll stop talking and let you talk a little bit more about those tools you use.
My go-to phrase is multi-channel, multi-platform. So there's absolutely still a lot of people sitting in front of their televisions watching traditional TV. We have one of the best media buyers on the planet who's been doing it for many years. I won't say how many because she'd kill me, but she has been in TV and radio for, I can't even tell you how long. It was through our relationship in my previous position where I was able to explain to her what multi-channel, multi-platform was. So she knew TV worked in the ways that it did. She knew that radio had a place where it had a place. And here I come in and tell her, yeah, but you gotta put this on top of it, whether it was Ground Truth or whether it was a targeted email type of product, or whether it was even social, something as simple as social media to help bring it all together. And so I'm a firm believer in, you know, you don't put all your eggs in one basket and you don't want to spread them too thin as well. So to find that perfect balance is always interesting, but it's something that we have to do for the benefit of our client. And where we used to say, you know, you want to reach your target 3 times in a certain amount of, you know, time period, it can be done now on multiple platforms. You can still reach them in many different ways. You throw in IP addresses and the audience targeting that we have and location targeting that we have at our disposal through multiple vendors, and you can reach your target in many more ways than you ever thought were possible.
Yeah.
Amanda, quick question for you and James. Sorry to butt in, Nick. So sometimes we'll have conversations with clients that are a little bit more reticent to add on multiple platforms. They want to go straight to like the trade desk or straight to just one DSP and get it all done in one fell swoop. So I think what you just said really laid the groundwork for being a proponent of why you should incorporate, different types of platforms within the marketing plan, just for that, again, more holistic approach. But what other benefits? I mean, is there anything else you would highlight to encourage or just provide advice on how to do that best, or, how that looks to get started?
Data.
Yeah.
Data is huge for that. To be able to either take another client, it could be a different vertical. It could absolutely be a completely different industry. If the goal is the same, to either bring people in or to increase web traffic, or to even if it's a branding campaign and get that brand awareness out there. If you can grab data from something, whether it's something that you've done, or for instance, if you're using Ground Truth, I can't tell you how many times I go to Nick and I'm like, Nick, I need something in this industry from somebody. I just need to know what's working somewhere else. So that way you can go in and show your clients, look, this may be in a different market, or this may be in a different industry. But if the goal is the same, if the outcome that you want is the same, then here's some numbers. The numbers don't lie. They just don't. And it's something that, you put the little story behind it, the feel goods behind it. And I think that absolutely can help them to understand why it is important to layer in a strategic way.
Yeah. So lean on your account executives at a Ground Truth to help you guys tell the story, is what I'm hearing. And we're
line abuse, even borderline abuse.
I love it. That kind of goes back to something that both of you said at the beginning of this call, kind of resonated with me. Sides being around for quite some time. James, you're talking about some legacy clients that you guys had. I think relationships in any agency game, and again, to bring it back to what we're talking about here, is how's an agency going to plan for next year? How's an agency going to grow or maintain its business? Relationships are obviously a really, really important part of that. So, knowing that you have a baseline of trust, how do you use that relationship to grow existing accounts, and what opportunities, if any, do you think that this whole tornado of a year has presented to you guys across your current client book or in a new business perspective? And either of you, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I could jump in. We always, our whole philosophy in terms of just growth as a company is, it's based on three things. It's nourish, expand, evolve, right? So first things first is our existing customers. Like all of our relationships that we have, we get them in the door, and it's a very consultative relationship, right? So what are your goals? How are we going to go about accomplishing these goals? So before we even move on to, finding new clients or, evolving our technologies, it's always about making sure that who we're already working with we're knocking it out of the park, right? So that's first and foremost. So, given all the changes that have happened, what does that mean? How do we move forward? What's the next step, right? So it's really taking a look at, doubling down on conversion tracking, right? So if we're getting more focused on, driving applications on their website, or, driving mobile adoptions, or whatever the case may be, how do we go about setting up, our analytics so that we're actually capturing that and optimizing towards the best possible conversions that we can be driving? And again, it's business line by business line. So different products will have different KPIs. And then, we also have to factor in location, even though events aren't taking place and there's no, there's not as much of that in-person or branch traffic stuff. You really still have to make sure that you're being efficient, right? So the shotgun approach doesn't always work, in terms of targeting an entire DMA or targeting an entire zip code. Depending on what your goals are, marketing is still seen as an expense. It's a non-interest expense line item on an income statement for a bank, right? So you want to make sure you're driving efficiency. You're making your CMO the hero. You don't want to be, you have to be running efficient campaigns. So it's figuring out where is that efficiency, and how do we actually focus in on the areas that make sense rather than getting the message out to everybody. And then, even again, from another location standpoint, I mean, there's other things like fair lending, CRA, there's certain tract-based location targeting that's really important for banks. You have regulations, you have obligations you need to fulfill and report to, FDIC, FRB, OCC. This is all regulated, so you have to make sure that you're getting your messaging out to the specific tracks, your LMI tracks, your minority tracks, whatever the case may be. So it's really focusing on what is the goal for each business line and how are we doing this digitally, as opposed to, the more traditional kind of in-person event-based stuff.
I'm going to need a list of all those acronyms at the end of this call so I can start doing some Googling and get a little bit better at talking to finance people.
It's like a fraction of them. There's so many.
Well, that just speaks to the experience that you guys have, and you're able to just rattle those off really quickly, and it speaks to the depth of experience in that field that Rain brings to the table. I know I'm getting pinged. We're sort of running up on time a little bit. I talk a lot, so we always like to leave some time at the end for Q&A, which I'll remind everybody gently again while we go through these last couple of questions that there is a Q&A button in your Zoom. Feel free to write things in there, and we will do our best to tackle those questions. Be civil.
Yeah. Yes. I've got a few popped up, so I'll read them out when you give me the heads up.
Two things I wanted to finish off for both of you guys. Just a little bit more of a personal note. Everybody's had a different experience with this, in the agency sense and also in the personal sense. As a consumer, what do you think the biggest change in your behavior has been this year? For example, I got a dog, right? And I also got a exercise bike, which was not me 10 months ago. So, a couple big changes have happened for me, but I'm interested in hearing about, what's changed for you guys as consumers.
I'm home a lot. And anyone who knows me knows I am a social butterfly. I like to be out and about. One of the things that I firmly believe in is we're Cajuns. We don't know how to socially distance. It's not in our blood. It's not in our heritage. We are the type of community and the type of just our culture is just to gather. We have some of the biggest, most amazing festivals here in Louisiana that did not happen this year. And that has been, just as a consumer, that's been very difficult. That's something where we get to see things from all around the world. One of our biggest is Festival, the International, and we get musicians from all over the world that come in here, and out here music is life. And we haven't been able to do that. It's been very, very different in the sense of just not being able to have that connection the same way, in any way, shape, or form. Even in shopping, if you go to a store and you want to buy something and you want to ask an opinion, can't do that right now, or it's different right now. So I think as a consumer, that's been the biggest thing here that I've had to struggle with is, a lot of Zoom, a lot of phone calls, FaceTime, those types of things where you can't actually reach out and touch that person. And right now it's not recommended that you do. So been different.
Well, actually, are both of you guys sort of engaging in a client gifting at the end of the year? I know a lot of agencies will do that, and to speak for some of the agencies that are on this call right now, listening in for the plan, do you guys use that as a tool? Is it a sales tool? Is it just a keep clients happy? What does that mean to you guys as a tactic?
Yeah, we do every year. It's just kind of part of the process. It's not so much, it's just a nice thing we do. Send something out. It's a huge bummer. I'm used to getting in front of our clients. It's used to having the face-to-face time. And New Orleans is one of my favorite places in the world. I love Louisiana, the whole state. I have a couple clients down there, and I used to go down to Jazz Fest every year. It's the whole thing. I love it so much. But it's there's the gifts go out, but it's nothing replaces that face-to-face time.
So, obviously you're out in LA, you have social distancing built in to your lifestyle already with all the cars. So, what's changed for you as a consumer?
My Amazon Prime account is just everything gets tossed over my fence in a box these days. I haven't been grocery shopping in months. It's all just delivered. Yeah, it's crazy. Even, my family's back east, right? So it's, the whole holiday season has been an interesting one just because it's kind of the first time where I'm not getting on a plane and not, traveling across the country. And LA, I feel like every week it gets a little more lockdown, right? They open up the restaurants, they close them back up again. You have the, the outside seating, and then that goes away too. So, I think this is just going to we're just going to write off this holiday season. We're just going to get through this, next couple of weeks, whatever it is. And then it's for the best, numbers are spiking. So it makes sense to kind of chill out a little bit, but yeah, it's been a huge shock for sure.
Rough time to being out of home. I said we were going to wrap this up. I do want to ask one question that MC had put to me is are there cutting edge things. I know location, James, you said at the beginning of this call, it's a shiny new thing. Mobile is pretty shiny and new to a lot of these clients. And man, I know we've had conversations like that as well, whereas you're introducing and you're educating. Are there other things that you think agencies in general are looking at? Your IoT devices and voice search and influencers, and there are all these different channels that are out there that are sort of emerging. What are you guys most excited for in that sense for 2021? And are they playing roles in your planning?
I definitely think that they're playing roles. Some of our smaller clients are actually seeing the benefit of it. Their budgets are smaller. They definitely don't have the means that maybe a government contract would, or the means that a large financial institution may have, or, and I have a small sign and graphics company out here whose budget is, it is what it is, and it's the best that they can do. But to make the best of it, and that's on me, is to find the best mix of products to be able to show them that you can still have a healthy marketing plan with even a smaller budget. I definitely think mobile helps with that, with the amount, the gross amount of impressions that you can offer someone for the different price points that you can. And then it's just a matter of, again, showing them the data, even though we can't be in front of them like we've been in the past. And out here, sometimes you have to hold their hand, and sometimes you have to, our word is ta-ta them, where you have to make sure that they feel confident in what you're doing. And it may be 2 visits a month, it may be a phone call a week. It depends on who they are. But to still stay in front of them in one way, shape, or form, a phone call still works, to hear your voice, to let them know that, you're on top of this, you're making sure that their campaigns are optimized, that you are still, even though you're not in front of them delivering those reports, you're getting them the reports on time, and just making sure that you connect in some way. It may be different today, but at least continuing to have that connection and maintaining that trust in what you are presenting them with.
Yeah. It's a lot of that consultative sale. It seems like everybody on this call, that's really the way we approach this, is putting together, a complementary media plan based on consultative conversations. And so, James, what are you excited about? What do you think agencies are thinking about? Specifically, hey, you guys have a lot of guardrails in your industry. You have a lot of, idiosyncrasies with the way that you have to approach what we do. So, what are you seeing?
Yeah, I think as things start to open back up again, and they will, and they are, going to. It's just a matter of time. Any sort of location-based stuff, things like ground truth, where we can actually, look at that footfall attribution. We can look at that past location data and marry it with the third-party data and everything like that. That's going to be huge. We're getting into jumping a little more into the lead gen based campaigns right now, where we're actually looking at refining the whole process. Anything that helps out with that sort of thing, right? I mean, you can treat a campaign as a branding campaign. You can drive traffic to websites. You can drive traffic to applications. But if you're looking, there's a lot of value to generating a mortgage lead, right? If you get somebody a list of actual actionable contact information where you can actually reach out and close a high ticket product like that, I think there's a lot of interest there. So it's kind of a direction we're moving, as well as the track-based stuff I was talking about before with this the Community Reinvestment Act and fair lending type stuff. So those are the biggest things on our
radar.
Radar right now moving forward, I would say.
Well, I've talked enough. It's been wonderful, but we're gonna have some Q&A from people that aren't me or MC.
Yeah.
Jump in with some questions from the crowd.
Yes, I would love to. My pal Stuart, who is just religious about attending these webinars. So I just want to shout out to Stu, say thanks for always making this a priority, if you will. But Stuart asked a great question, and I think it relates a lot to our space specifically. And if you his question was, how are you guys preparing for the release in 2021? It may be March, it may be some other time, but for the IDFA changes that Apple has coming down the line, so iOS 14, so forth. And I mean, is that something you're hearing a lot in the space, clients concerned about, and how are you approaching that? I know Ground Truth, we have our own, team working diligently on that, but
baby.
Yay, what are you guys doing? We can start with Amanda.
To be quite honest, it's not something we're hearing a lot at this time. I'm sure as we get a lot closer, we will. But in all honesty, I rely on the people that I surround myself with to help me to deliver. Yeah, he's waiting. He knows who he is to help me in that aspect. And that goes back to service. Seriously, we've got 100 plates spinning at any given time. And I tend to coin myself a jack of all trades, master of none, except relying on those that I surround myself with. I'm only as smart as those people. So I absolutely think if you use your resources to get that information out the best way possible, and of course, it's going to be across the table, not just with Ground Truth, but with any of the vendors that you may use. Get a jump start on it now. Find out what you need to now, get the information that you can, and be prepared. It's going to change. Everything changes every day. But if we're prepared, it'll help us to tackle that better when it comes.
100%. And James, with you guys being mobile kind of first and working directly with apps, I'm sure you kind of probably have anticipated or had more questions around this. Is that true?
Yeah, it comes up. It definitely comes up. And there's been, what the interesting part about it is that, when changes like this happen, they're sweeping changes. They affect everybody, right? So it's never just kind of one vendor or one platform. It's across the board. And we've got our fulfillment team is actually, we've been putting together a few documents that are basically client facing, that are explaining kind of just getting them ready for it, but, at the end of the day, we lose targeting options all the time. Facebook gets in trouble once a month. I feel like, so you can't target by this or that, and you get your special ad category for finance marketing. Same thing for Google, they follow. But at the end of the day, the main point is that people are still spending 70% of their media consumption on a phone, right? So it's regardless of what the targeting options are, what happens, or how you have to roll with the punches. That's still where the eyeballs are, and that's the value you have to sell to your clients.
Yeah. So really this boils down to, like you're both saying, leaning on, an education piece, getting prepared for what's to come. It will change. No one really understands or knows at this point in time what it's going to look like, but just having those conversations and being very transparent and, hey, this is forthcoming. This is what we're doing to prepare. And then, we'll roll with the punches and we'll adjust as it gets here. So that's great. A few more.
That are on the call. I mean, at least in my experience, and I think in yours, MC, we've had some conversations about it. We do see this come up more often at the enterprise level and at larger client levels, and then less so in the SMB level. But to Amanda's point, it's not going to not happen. So and to MC's point, it pays to be prepared in advance and to start educating yourself. So you don't have to rely on, people like us, and you can actually have these types of conversations standing on your own. But it's also good to have someone like us in your corner.
Hundy, Nicholas. Sean asked this question. Can you please ask, what is the best way to approach or pitch a new customer? So this is a great question. I think I'm interested to hear what you guys do and how you do it, because we have our own way.
Who's got an elevator
as a partner, but I'd love to hear. James, let's pivot to you.
Sell me this pen, James.
Yeah.
This pen, sign your name. Right here. Yeah, there's a lot of different ways to do that, and I think it really comes down to A/B testing a lot of different ways. We've got a sales team here where we're doing our cold outreach. I don't think anything could ever be. There's no better scenario than a happy existing client referral, right? So you ask for referrals. That's one of the, especially if you're earlier on, you're a smaller agency, I would say. I mean, that's been huge for us. Just, it goes back to that nourish, expand, evolve thing I talked about before. If you focus on your clients first, make sure they're happy and tell your friends about us, that kind of thing. I think, there's the cold outreach methods. You can pick up a phone, make the calls, send the emails. But if you're doing that, if you're going the cold call route, you really want to make sure you're being as tailored as possible. You really have to focus on the person, not focus on the organization. I mean, there's a whole lot of stuff out there that you can kind of fall back on. But I think, start with your existing clients, start with whoever you're doing a good job with, have them tell their friends, build out that, personas around who it's been working for, go after similar institutions, similar clients, that kind of thing. But yeah, just A, B, C, D, E, F test, try everything. There's a lot of different ways to get in front of people. And these people get 900 calls a day, 900 emails a day.
That's awesome.
To James's point, something that's been somewhat successful, and I've worked in a number of industries, but personalization is ultimate. And everybody gets, like you just said, 900 emails a day. Don't do form fill emails. Don't do templated emails. Don't do anything like that. Find something out about that person and reference it. Or, tying into what James just said, ask your current client, say, hey, is it okay if I name drop you with these 5 people? And put the name in the subject line and say, hey, I work with Jim Jones. And then they'll open that email and you have your 3 lines to pitch them. So it's a great thing to personalize and a great thing to get network validation, what we call like social buy-in. Schwegs, do you have anything to add there?
I would have to say my go-to approach on, especially when it comes to a pitch, is I make it all about them. And the more information that you can learn about a new customer or a new client, the better. I let them talk. I love to talk, but I absolutely have to, man, I wish there was a mute button on me sometimes, but to be able to sit back and listen. That is one of the things that I've learned over the years that just absolutely makes all the difference. It's got to be all about them. They're nervous as it is to have to spend this money especially when it comes to marketing and advertising. Again, that expense line is something that they can easily cross out and say, okay, we're going to have to drop this, because it's one of the first things that they cut when the time does come and cuts have to be made. So when you make it all about them and you really learn about their business, and it's not just going in there and saying, oh, I've got the perfect thing for you. If you don't know anything about them, how can you honestly pitch them anything? So I definitely try to approach them with the customized plan, the customized approach, and that when I come back to you, or when we talk again, or when I send you over something, it's absolutely going to touch on the things that either caused you pain, or where you want that growth to be, or what you're just excited about in the coming year for your business. So try to take myself back a step and make it all about them.
Yeah, that's huge. I used to work at a really large agency here in Atlanta, and we had pitches all the time for new biz. And it was, to your point, Amanda, it's not about ground truth. It's what we know about them and how, where we see pitfalls that maybe they're not even attuned to, or where we see like, this is what you're currently doing. Here's how we can accelerate that, or blah, blah, blah. But no, both of what you guys just said, tailoring and, doing your due diligence, asking for referrals. These are great. These are great. We have a few more questions, so I just want to make sure we have time for them. So Michael asked, who do we speak with at Ground Truth to learn more about all the offerings? Michael, you can speak to myself. You can speak to Nick. We have the alias. Nick, if you'll scroll back to the screen with the email on it, that will showcase self-serve help at groundtruth.com, or you can go to Ad Experts, which is coming right here, at groundtruth.com, and we'll get you in touch with someone. So just be on the lookout for that email. And then Lawrence said, this is also directed for James and Amanda. I understand it's on a case-by-case basis, but generally speaking, how much is Ground Truth part of your marketing strategy? So we'll start with Amanda for that.
It goes in every proposal. Honestly, it does. It changes based on either the vertical or the needs of the client, for sure. But I absolutely put it in front of as many people as possible. One of the main reasons is the data. It's trackable. I mean, it's very hard to kind of turn a blind eye to the fact that we can big brother somebody in this day and age, and that we can absolutely, as creepy as it may sound to some people, follow them based on their behaviors, based on where they shop, based on their likes and their interests. And so when it comes down to it, especially when budgets are either being cut or they are smaller than maybe what some of the larger companies out here or anywhere may have to offer, it's something that you can tailor it. You can make it as large as you want, as small as you want. You can piggyback it off of something and make it into a more of a full plan, or it can stand alone. So I absolutely put ground truth in every proposal that I put together.
Awesome. And I know James is with, location kind of being something newer adding in 2021. I'm sure it will be on a case by case basis for you guys as well. Based on the different business lines and that sort of thing, where it makes sense. I think that's also something that the conversations that we have with clients is it may not always make sense. I think that it's great to have on the plan, and it's meant to complement these other strategies that you're running: social, search, traditional. We now are omni-channel, so we're able to reach these offline audiences on desktop and connected TV, and mobile. So I think it can be applicable for all. And then there's times where I'll have a conversation with a client. I'm like, I don't think this is going to be for you. I don't think this is the ticket for what you're looking to do. And I think having those transparent conversations of just, again, being consultative and saying, this is what's going to work and this may or may not, but we can test it, because to Amanda's point, there's very low cost of entry, barrier of entry for our product, specifically being ads manager, self-serve. So I don't know, James, if you wanted to add anything to that real quick, the last 2 minutes.
No, you think you're dead on. Where it makes sense is, where it makes sense. It's, certain campaigns will be more branding focused, not necessarily location. Other ones will be, way more location based. So it's, again, each client has multiple business lines that are running with us, and we have multiple clients running different things. So when it's a location based thing, that's when you use it. If it's blanket everybody and just get the word out to as many people as you can, maybe not. I don't know. Just depends.
So I wanted to, just before we hop off here, give both of you guys, both James and Amanda, a chance just to give out your contact information. I'm sure we can send that along to anybody who requests it from Ad Expert. But if there are people on this call who aren't in agencies or are more on the client side, have heard something that they like, wanted to learn some more about Rain, want to learn some more about Sides, want to learn less about us, you can talk to these people about their agencies and what they do in your specific verticals. So if either of you guys want to just sort of drop your contact information now, we can sort of wrap this up and move along.
Yeah, I'm James at rainlocal.com. I mean, that's
straightforward.
Yeah, it's pretty easy.
Rain, RAIN, local.
Yeah, rain like the weather, rainlocal.com. And then if you just go rainlocal.com, there's a lot of stuff on there too. That's speaks to what it is that we do, some case studies and stuff. But yeah, just that's me. Hit me up whenever.
All right.
Mine is Amanda J at sides.com.
Easy.
I wouldn't make anybody spell that last name.
All right. Well, thank you guys for joining. This has been MaryClaire Hitson, Nick Jones from a closet in Brooklyn. Read everything you read about the apartments here in New York is true. They're very tiny, and this is my office. But if you have any questions, Ad Expert at groundtruth.com. James at Rain Local, Amanda J at sides.com. Feel free to reach out. None of us bite. All of us are nice. We will talk to you soon. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone.
All right. Bye now.
Bye, guys.